but he remained unmoved, though he saw it, and rejoiced that they were devoured and swallowed and robbed, and left them to be devoured in the hand of all the beasts. And he called 70 shepherds, and cast those sheep to them that they might pasture them, and he spake to the shepherds and their companions, Let each individual of you pasture the sheep henceforward, and everything that I shall command you that do ye. And I will deliver them over unto you duly numbered, and tell you which of them are to be destroyed, and them destroy ye. And he gave over unto them those sheep. And he called another and spake unto him, Observe and mark everything that the shepherds will do to those sheep. For they will destroy more of them than I have commanded them. And every excess and the destruction which will be wrought through the shepherds, record namely how many they destroy according to my command, and how many according to their own caprice, record against every individual shepherd all the destruction he effects. And read out before me by number how many they destroy, and how many they deliver over for destruction, that I may have this as a testimony against them, and know every deed of the shepherds, that I may comprehend and see what they do, whether or not they abide by my command which I have commanded them. But they shall not know it, and thou shalt not declare it to them, nor admonish them, but only record against each individual all the destruction which the shepherds effect each in his time, and lay it all before me. And I saw till those shepherds pastured in their season, and they began to slay and to destroy more than they were bidden, and they delivered those sheep into the hand of the lions. And the lions and tigers eat and devoured the greater part of those sheep, and the wild boars eat along with them. And they burnt that tower and demolished that house. And I became exceedingly sorrowful over that tower, because that house of the sheep was demolished, and afterwards I was unable to see if those sheep entered that house. And the shepherds and their associates delivered over those sheep to all the wild beasts, to devour them, and each one of them received in his time a definite number. It was written by the other in a book how many each one of them destroyed of them. And each one slew and destroyed many more than was prescribed. And I began to weep and lament on account of those sheep. And thus in the vision I saw that one who wrote, how he wrote down every one that was destroyed by those shepherds, day by day, and carried up and laid down and showed actually the whole book to the master of the sheep, even everything that they had done, and all that each one of them had made away with, and all that they had given over to destruction. And the book was read before the master of the sheep, and he took the book from his hand and read it and sealed it and laid it down. And forthwith I saw how the shepherds pastured for 12 hours, and behold 3 of those sheep turned back and came and entered and began to build up all that had fallen down of that house. But the wild boars tried to enter them, but they were not able. And they began again to build as before, and they reared up that tower, and it was named the High Tower. And they began again to place a table before the tower, but all the bread on it was polluted and not pure. And as touching all this the eyes of those sheep were blinded so that they saw not, and the eyes of their shepherds likewise. And they delivered them in large numbers to their shepherds for destruction, and they trampled the sheep with their feet and devoured them. And the master of the sheep remained unmoved till all the sheep were dispersed over the field and mingled with them, that is the beasts, and they that is the shepherds did not save them out of the hand of the beasts. And this one who wrote the book carried it up, and showed it and read it before the master of the sheep, and implored him on their account, and besought him on their account, as he showed him all the doings of the shepherds, and gave testimony before him against all the shepherds. And he took the actual book and laid it down beside him and departed. Chapter 8. And I saw till that in this manner 35 shepherds undertook the pasturing of the sheep, and they severally completed their periods as did the first. And others received them into their hands, to pasture them for their period, each shepherd in his own period. And after that I saw in my vision all the birds of heaven coming, the eagles, the vultures, the kites, the ravens. But the eagles led all the birds. And they began to devour those sheep, and to pick out their eyes and to devour their flesh. And the sheep cried out because their flesh was being devoured by the birds, and as for me I looked and lamented in my sleep over the shepherd who pastured the sheep. And I saw until those sheep were devoured by the dogs and eagles and kites, and they left neither flesh nor skin nor sinew remaining on them till only their bones stood there, and their bones too fell to the earth, and the sheep became few. And I saw until that 23 had undertaken the pasturing and completed in their several periods 58 times. But behold, lambs were born by those white sheep, and they began to open their eyes and to see, and to cry to the sheep. Yea, they cried to them, but they did not hearken to what they said to them, but were exceedingly deaf, and their eyes were very exceedingly blinded. And I saw in the vision how the ravens flew upon those lambs and took one of those lambs, and dashed the sheep in pieces and devoured them. And I saw till horns grew upon those lambs, and the ravens cast down their horns. And I saw till there sprouted a great horn of one of those sheep, and their eyes were opened. And it looked at them, and their eyes opened, and it cried to the sheep, and the rams saw it and all ran to it. And notwithstanding all this, those eagles and vultures and ravens and kites still kept tearing the sheep and swooping down upon them and devouring them. Still the sheep remained silent, but the rams lamented and cried out. And those ravens fought and battled with it and sought to lay low its horn, but they had no power over it. All the eagles and vultures and ravens and kites were gathered together, and there came with them all the sheep of the field, yea, they all came together, and helped each other to break that horn of the ram. And I saw till a great sword was given to the sheep, and the sheep proceeded against all the beasts of the field to slay them, and all the beasts and the birds of the heaven fled before their face. And I saw that man, who wrote the book according to the command of the Master, till he opened that book concerning the destruction which those 12 last shepherds had wrought, and showed that they had destroyed much more than their predecessors, before the Master of the sheep. And I saw till the Master of the sheep came unto them and took in his hand the staff of his wrath, and smote the earth, and the earth clave asunder, and all the beasts and all the birds of the heaven fell from among those sheep, and were swallowed up in the earth, and it covered them. And I saw till a throne was erected in the pleasant land, and the Master of the sheep sat himself thereon, and the other took the sealed books and opened those books before the Master of the sheep. And the Master called those men the 7 first white ones, and commanded that they should bring before him, beginning with the first star which led the way, all the stars whose privy members were like those of horses, and they brought them all before him. And he said to that man who rode before him, being one of those 7 white ones, and said unto him, Take those 70 shepherds to whom I delivered the sheep, and who taking them on their own authority slew more than I commanded them. And behold, they were all bound, I saw, and they all stood before him. And the judgment was held first over the stars, and they were judged and found guilty, and went to the place of condemnation, and they were cast into an abyss, full of fire and flaming, and full of pillars of fire. And those 70 shepherds were judged and found guilty, and they were cast into that fiery abyss. And I saw at that time how a like abyss was opened in the midst of the earth, full of fire, and they brought those blinded sheep, and they were all judged and found guilty and cast into this fiery abyss, and they burned. Now this abyss was to the right of that house. And I saw those sheep burning and their bones burning. And I stood up to see till they folded up that old house, and carried off all the pillars, and all the beams and ornaments of the house were at the same time folded up with it, and they carried it off and laid it in a place in the south of the land. And I saw till the master of the sheep brought a new house greater and loftier than that first,